From the beautiful city of Los Angeles, California, we bring you the Gimme 3 podcast. Hello and welcome, cinephiles, cinema lovers, movie appreciators, friends and family, to the Gimme 3 podcast, a series for cinephiles. This is the show where we pick 3 films based on one theme. I am Nicholas Ybarra, and we are in full swing of spooky season, everybody. Spooky season is here, and we're going to have a hell of a lot of horror-themed episodes for you this month. And I mean a hell of a lot, including next week, we're going to have not 1, not 2, but 3 episodes dropping dedicated to horror films directed by women. We're going to be joined by returning guest Jess McLaughlin discussing horror films directed by women. And you're also going to hear an interview with one of my favorite filmmakers, director of films like Poison Ivy, Strip to Kill, and The Rage, Carrie 2. None other than Kat Shea will be joining us on the show next week. But on today's show, not only are we celebrating October with, spooky season, horror films, but we're also coming up at the end of Hispanic Heritage Month. So today what we're doing is we're taking you back, all the way back to the year 2020. Speaking of scary shit. 2020, I was joined by my brother from another mother, the incredible writer-director Felix Martiz, to discuss Hispanic Horrors on our OG podcast, Film Forward. So we got Hispanic horror films here. These are horror films directed by Hispanic filmmakers. Full disclosure, my mic was not as good as the mic I have now, so you're going to hear a little bit of a dip in audio quality from me. Felix sounds terrific. He sounds terrific. He looks terrific. He is terrific. But there are some absolute gems in this episode, some incredible movies that we discuss. So buckle up, grab a michelada, and enjoy me and my homie, Felix Martiz, Gimme 3 Hispanic Horrors. We've got another one of our famous Gimme 3 episodes today, one that I am very excited about, and I'm even more excited to be joined by my old friend, brilliant writer-director, and the owner of some of the finest facial hair of all times, Mr. Felix Martiz. Felix, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Nick. Thank you for having me. My beard thanks you too. They can't talk right now.
Is it still, it's been a long time since I've seen you, but is it, you always had what do kids say? Like facial hair on fleek. Like that shit was nice, lean cut, like just perfect lines. I was like, good God. Is it still true?
It's getting back there, man. This quarantine did a number on me. So I didn't shave. I didn't touch it for like 4 months.
Right.
It was kind of disgusting. It really did take a life on its own. The moment that it tried to run away, like it literally was trying to just, like it was dragging me on the floor, like toward the door. And I woke up. I'm like, wait, what? That's when I'm like, I gotta cut it.
Right. Right.
So I'm trying to get back to that sleek look,
I recently shaved it all off for the first time in probably about 12 months. And, I went on a few Zoom calls and everybody was freaked out. They were like, get this kid off of the Zoom. Who's that?
It's so weird, man. Like I want to, like in all sincerity, I'm going to keep talking about quarantine because we're in quarantine. So
yeah.
During the quarantine time, it's like I felt some of the days I felt like so drained. My energy just felt so low and so dropped that I would blame it on my beard. I'm like, it's because this beard is like sucking up all my life force. I had a really interesting experience with my beard during the quarantine, man. It was just like, I hate you. I love you. Thank you for sticking with me. Or you've been with me from the beginning. Oh my God, stop your kid. It was the weirdest relationship I had with my beard. So I threatened it a couple of times to shave it off, but it knows it's a fake thread because I can't see myself shaved completely.
Yeah.
I just have one of those big faces that needs hair on it.
Yeah.
So it knows that I need it. So
yeah, don't do it, dude, because I did it. And as soon as I did it, I was like, fuck you. I looked in the mirror and I was like, this is ruined. The whole face is
ruined.
I made a big mistake.
Yeah.
That's what I want, though. I do want to feel that. I know I've done it, maybe, honestly, this is crazy to say, but like a decade ago, I think I shaved it all off.
Yeah.
And I had that moment where it's like, why did I do that?
Yeah.
And I want, it's been a long time. So I definitely want to see my face. And you know what's helping me right now? That I'm growing a lot of white hair. My beard has I have that, like the goatee. And you know how I either had a beard, and when I felt like going crazy, I would get the goatee going. Like nice and clean and shaved. Well, now the goatee is white more than the other hair.
Oh.
So now I'm like, oh my God. Or the bottom of it. And I'm like, uh-oh, it's time.
just to get the new follicles in.
Yeah. Dude, it wasn't that white at the beginning of the year. 2020.
2020, baby. 2020.
Took my year.
Thank you again for being here. We are going to talk about movies today, but we're mostly going to be talking about beards. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I was wondering. I'm like, great topic. About time. I honestly wrote a poem like 3 weeks ago. That was the first time I actually trimmed it, like just cut it, because I'm like, I need to cut it. And I'm like, I need to, like really, really have a good memory of how I felt about this beard during quarantine.
That's great. That's a great way to document the whole year, really, but especially the trimming of beards is
exactly
in poem form.
Yes, sir.
So today we got some I'm really excited to talk about these movies. Our theme for this Gimme 3 episode is Hispanic Horrors. It being Hispanic Heritage Month. We're coming up on the end of that, and obviously Halloween is coming up at the end of the month. So we decided to combine those two themes, and we've got some really, not just great films to discuss. I think we've got some important films to discuss. So I am excited, Mr. Felix. So if you will, give us your first one, sir.
Yes, sir. The first one that I'm going to talk about is Tigers Are Not Afraid.
Mm-hmm.
This is a Mexican film by director Issa Lopez, which was made in 2017, I believe, and can be found on Shudder. I believe it's a Shudder exclusive, if I'm not mistaken. I love this film. This was one of the films I had heard about. I read the synopsis, and I'm like, I got to watch this. And it delivers on every level. The film is about a group of kids that are kind of like, it's this little street gang, if you will, that is made up of kids whose parents were killed by cartel members. And then the film deals with kind of the traumas that the kids have. And there are horror elements in the story in the sense that they are being haunted by like the ghost of the people that have been murdered by the cartel.
Yeah.
And it is just, you think like, okay, that sounds interesting. But the way the movie lays it out, it just deals with it in such a beautiful and great way. It reminded me of Kronos to a certain degree, not to take anything away with it, but again, nothing like it. But I don't know if this is a thing, and I don't want to like kind of really talk down it, because that's not at all what I mean. But there's an idea of like urban horror, at its core, and it's like this really, really gut-wrenching, truthful look at the world we're in this case, Mexico. And the way the kids are being brought up, the way the cartels are ruining lives and destroying, communities and everything they're doing out there. And at the same time, having this fantastical element to it, this horror element, which again coincides so perfectly with the emotions and the feelings that these kids are dealing with on a daily basis, because, people are disappearing every day. And that's why I bring back Kronos to it, because Kronos has such an interesting approach, when it talked about or how it dealt with vampirism and all that. And it just kind of represented the real world and what this fantastical story would embody, in this now setting. But Tigers is so much more potent and so much more powerful in the way that its narrative structures the story of this little girl whose mother is missing and is convinced that, the cartel took him, or is not convinced, but she's being haunted by like her ghost. Mm-hmm. So she knows that the mom is missing definitely and probably dead, because she's seen her everywhere. And I really don't know how to talk about this film without giving it away, because I sincerely feel like everybody needs to watch this movie. And I really do feel that it's one of those things, like the first couple of minutes just watching it, you could see the setting, and you see how, like, where it's going to go, and you could feel how important it is. And it's not preachy in any way, and it's just letting you kind of go on for this ride of this, seeing the world through these kids' eyes, and letting you experience what it is that they're suffering, and what it is that they're scared of, and what it is that, they have to live with on a daily basis. That being said, the fairy tale elements to it, like, like the 3 wishes, that is a through line kind of to this thing, where she gets 3 wishes throughout the film, and it's knowing how and where to use these 3 wishes. And again, I know that that doesn't make sense out of context, but I don't want to give anything away because it's such a well structured film. The narrative of it is just telling you from one point to the midpoint to the end, and it all just coincides beautifully and perfectly. And the balance of horror and drama and just kind of the emotionality that it brings out in these quiet moments between these two kids are phenomenal. The kids are great. They're not professional actors. I think this is all of their first things, and they just knocked it out of the park. Knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I loved this movie. I was rocked by the end of it. I'm talking like tears in my eyes, rocked. As you mentioned, it's just like a really, really smart use of allegory applied to the horror genre. And it just feels so damn real. Like the fantastical elements are a lot of fun. Like I said, they're woven together just really brilliantly, but the drama is what's really captivating in this. And because it's happening, it's like this is not a true story, obviously, but it is based in reality, and it's based on actual real world heartbreaking stuff that's happening. So from the first scene, it just kind of pushes its foot on the gas pedal, and it never lets up.
Yeah. And again, the way it deals with these traumatic elements that these kids are suffering, in that first scene, the first scene is a school getting shut up, or there's a shooting going on outside the classroom, and it's cartel because the cartel's out there. And again, like the way the kids is like, we close in on their faces, and like they're just terrified, for their lives and for the lives of the teacher and for everything else that's outside of that room.
Yeah.
It's like such a heavy burden that these cartels put on on these kids' minds on an every minute basis. It's like from that moment, the little girl is like kind of already in a different place and thinking about the world in a different way. And yeah, it's definitely very interesting how, again, it approaches trauma from that angle, from that perspective of the horror that it brings. And I'm going to say, we don't know if her mom's dead or not at the beginning of the film, but
right,
what she sees is the ideas that we have because of what we see in the news, because we know the cartel is like, they don't do anything secretly. They bag people and they shoot them. And it's like, these are the elements that we know to be real in life. And once they start haunting this little girl, I mean, who's to say that it's, that it's not all in her mind, that it's not just things that she's manifesting because of the horrors of, of not knowing, just not knowing is just scary enough. Really,
absolutely.
Really great film, really worth checking out. It's an hour and a half. It's like under an hour and a half, but the punch is like, it's going to last a long time. I watched it back to back,
Yeah.
And
it's lean and mean, baby. Like it moves, like you said, under an hour and a half, and it just like it wastes no moments.
Dude, and how about that blood? Remember that there's like this little blood stream that kind of follows?
That blood trail. Yeah.
Dude, wow. I saw that and I'm like, that is phenomenal. Like it's like it uses the most kind of simple approach to kind of these big ideas, that you can't escape it. You can't escape the horror that the world is putting in front of you. Like no matter what, it's like destined to hit you. It's coming for you at all times. And you get all that from just watching a little stream of blood, kind of flowing toward you. And you're like, wow, that is intense. That is so well made. Issa Lopez is making something with Guillermo Del Toro now. So I got kind of
fascinating. Okay.
Yeah, her next project is a Guillermo Del Toro produced project. So it's really interesting, man. I would say watch this movie. Filmmakers, go out, and I'm going to say it right now. Issa Lopez, Issa Lopez. I just started to get obsessed with her right now. And the first thing that came up was an interview with her. And she had like the hardest time getting this off the ground, like in festivals. So that was really interesting to hear. Like she didn't get a good festival run. Everybody was saying no to her. And again, I don't know why.
That's so unbelievable to me.
Yeah, it honestly is. And the interview kind of alluded to the fact that she actually had, she talked to some of the festival directors later on when she became a little bit more known. And they're like, oh, we would never say no to this film. Why didn't you submit it? And she's like, I did. Here's the rejection letter. And she was kind of talking about how sometimes the festival, like the screeners didn't even get seen.
Yeah, that's the thing. As a festival programmer, this podcast is directly related to the Los Angeles Diversity Film Festival. I hear that so much from filmmakers. We have some really incredible films come across our plate every year, and they say, yeah, you're the first one that's accepted us. And I'm talking like these movies are better than like the Academy Award nominated shorts, some of these. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, yeah, you're the first one. And I think it's because so many times film festivals don't actually take the time to watch the films, right, which is, their loss, but it's also kind of shady because people are, paying money to submit films to festivals. So yeah, I'm interested to check out a couple interviews with Issa Lopez because I just looked at her filmography, and before this, it seemed like she was doing a lot of comedy stuff. Yeah. So I'd love to hear like her story of like not only trying to get it off the ground in distribution, but like, I assumed that this movie might have, she wrote and directed it. I assumed that this movie was kind of living with her for a while, like she was waiting to make this movie, right, because it feels like it was made with a lot of love and a lot of passion. So
absolutely, a lot of precision too, man. Like she had time to just really go for this, and again, look at every detail and look at every moment and just make it pop on screen.
Fantastic. Tigers Are Not Afraid. As Felix mentioned, it is available on Shudder. I implore you all to check it out. If you are going to check out one movie on Shudder this Halloween season, have it be that one.
Absolutely. And can I mention one quick thing? In Spanish, I think the title is called Vuelven.
Yeah, I noticed that. Mm-hmm.
Isn't that crazy? Like, the first time and probably only time I will ever say, like, man, that English subtitle just works a lot better for the film.
Right. For sure. Okay, so my first one, I'm going to take it all the way back to 1968. Mexico's golden age of cinema. Ooh. With a film called Hasta, viento, tiene, miedo, which translates to Even the Wind is Afraid. So this film kind of takes place at a all-girls school, university, and it follows one girl in particular, Claudia, who is having these reoccurring nightmares of a woman dying, hanging herself in this tower that exists on their school's campus. So her and her friends are trying to investigate it, but they keep getting thwarted by the principal, who's kind of like, she's tighter than a nun's asshole, like Nurse Ratched type, character. And as they keep digging, as you can imagine, the more they dig, the crazier the story gets. But what I love about this film is just how classic it is in a horror sense. And it's just classic, beautiful. When I say classic horror, I'm talking like use of chiaroscuro shadows. It's got like creaky steps, creaky doors, vibrant colors. When the girls scream, they like put their hands in their hair, they're like, ah! So it just, when I watch it, I try and watch it every few years. It just starts to feel like Halloween. It's very Hitchcockian. And like I said, it's 1968. So it's I'm sure Hitchcock was probably somewhat of an inspiration for it. But there's also a lot of really fun female empowerment thematic stuff going on in here. There's a lot of references to caged birds. These students are trapped in this college. They're kept there over vacation. That's kind of when the story takes place. These girls were naughty. They did some bad shit. So the mean principal keeps them there over what is supposed to be their like fall vacation. So they're kind of prisoners in this school. And, it refers a lot to like what happens when you keep people, in particular, young, lively women, when you keep them hostage. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And it is available right now on Tubi for free. You just have to watch a couple ads to go along with it. Have you seen this film, Felix?
You know what? I saw it a long time ago, and it's funny because I didn't know where to find it. I'm really happy you brought it up. There's this one, and there's another one called, I think, The Black Vampire. Have you ever seen that one?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Have you seen that?
I haven't. I've been looking for that one forever, and I can't find it.
How do we get that movie? Because I want to see that. But I'm glad you said that this one is available on Tubi, because I didn't know where to find it.
Yeah, it's on Tubi right now, and it is... Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it's very 60s, too. Like, it's just fun to watch, like a film that takes place in Mexico, and it could just as easily take place in America. You've got like the 60s haircuts. There's a scene where one of the girls is doing like this fantastic striptease sequence for her friends just because they're like so anxious to like get their rocks off, just to have some fun. So it's this great striptease sequence with like low camera angles that I'm pretty sure Tarantino totally jacked for Death Proof. But I love this movie. I try and check it out, every few years. If you're a fan of old school horror, like post Universal Monsters horror, this is a film for you.
Yeah, it lives somewhere between that and kind of that. What is that thing that Del Toro tried to do? It's like a famous. I think it's more British, right? English, like
yes, mm-hmm.
Like the hammer.
Like he tried to do with like Crimson Peak.
Yeah. It lives between that and like and just original horror, kind of like the old movie monster horror.
Yeah,
where it's like it has that old school feel. It's kind of slow paced.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to stick with it and really just appreciate it for what it is, which is really cool. It's a really cool test of like the differences in horror, in genre.
For sure.
Because this was a studio film, because the studio system in the 60s was thriving, booming. So it's really interesting to see that. And I like the comparison that you made toward like American films. It could be like an American thing, because it's like the system was set to kind of everybody have the same system, wherever in the world you're making the film, everybody's film is going to feel and look the same. Fun film, man. I'm going to check that out again. I haven't seen it in a long while.
Even the Wind is Afraid. It is available on Tubi, and it is directed by Carlos Enrique Taboada. Hopefully I said his last name right. Okay, Mr. Felix, let's get your second one.
Oh, man. Okay, so there's a film called The Untamed from 2016. It's by Mexican filmmaker Amat Escalante. And this is labeled a horror film. It's considered horror. I think it won some major awards, I think like in Berlin or something.
Okay.
Or Cannes or something. But I know I've heard of it and I wanted to see it for a long time. And thanks to Nick's podcast that's forcing me to really sit down and watch some of these movies, I'm like, you know what? This is the perfect chance to watch this film. So it took me forever to find it. Found it though. And I'm going to read to you what it says on the synopsis in IMDb. So it says, The Untamed, 2016. A couple in a troubled marriage locate a meteorite, initiating an encounter with a mysterious creature. Their lives are turned upside down by the discovery of the creature, which is a source of both pleasure and destruction. So the last part of that sentence is correct. Dude, I did none of anything else that we read is in the film. I think it's good backstory now that I know that though. I'm like, oh, okay,
right.
Because this is definitely a what the F type of movie. Because I mentioned to Nick earlier, it was like what the F when I was watching it. It was what the F after I watched it. It was what the F as I was trying to think back on it and be like, this kind of makes sense. It's still an interesting watch. The pacing of it is so insanely meticulously slow, but in a really interesting way, not in a boring way where you're like not into it. It's trying to, well, I'm not going to say it's trying to. I'm going to say what my interpretation of the film was. It's about sexuality and how repressed sexuality is kind of changed when that sexuality explodes, right? And it explodes into like either pleasure or not pleasure. And sex has a big theme in this, is the big theme in this film. And there is a monster which kind of allows this woman to kind of release her inhibitions. Not only that, but just kind of not take herself for granted because she is so bored in her current life. At the same time, that monster that we're talking about, it's like an alien, I'm guessing, right? Now I know it's an alien for sure. It looks like an alien, but I didn't know it was an alien.
Right.
Because it's an alien with tentacles.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so here we go. So there's no escaping it. There's no escaping it. If you don't know what tentacle porn is, look it up. Don't watch videos, just look it up.
Right.
And let this movie be your introduction to it. Because it would be really interesting to find out as you're watching this film if you're into tentacle porn or not. Because you know what? I don't know the levels of tentacle porn. I don't know if there's like hardcore and just softcore or like, but
yeah, I think there's, in Japan, I know it's huge.
Well, yeah, but it's definitely a Japanese thing and anime, but it's always like really forceful, right? It's really aggressive.
Yeah. From my,
cool. That's what I thought.
My understanding. I'm not a tentacle porn connoisseur. But
we're going to go with that as a fact because of, I wanted to research it, but I'm like, how about if I'm digging myself into a hole here? So I'm going to say all tentacle porn that I've seen or that I know of is usually aggressive and really just hardcore in nature.
Yeah.
And this film, I don't know if I saw an unrated version or maybe this is just how it's presented. This is the film, but there's a lot of nudity, a lot of other than the actual penetration you see around the area where it's happening.
Right.
And you definitely see, there's a scene where, okay, so I'm going to paint a pretty picture for you. So last night I was trying to jam this one in, and I'm watching it in my room around 2:00 because that's the time I have. And I'm like 2 a.m, by the way. So I'm watching this thing and I'm like, okay. And like I said, the pacing was kind of slow. So I dozed off. I wake up to a woman in complete ecstasy with like nothing but tentacles wrapped around her and something going inside of her. And I'm like, what the F happened to this? What am I watching? So random, dude. I woke up to a different movie and I'm like, what? No, what? I turned my TV off. I'm going to be honest with you, I hope that that would leak into my dream. It never did. So now I know I'm not into tentacle porn.
Right.
But then when I rewatched it today, I knew where we were going to head with it. Right. So
you were prepared.
Like being prepared for it. But then when it actually appears in the movie, since the movie is kind of like this weird pace, it actually feels like sensuality porn.
Right.
Because it's really sensual and it makes you kind of understand like what pleasure these people are deriving from this monster. Again, nothing horror about this movie. So unless the people are scared of tentacles.
Right. Tentacles or aliens.
Or aliens.
Or of female pleasure, which some people are afraid of that.
For real, you're not kidding. I mean that because, yeah, there is definitely two storylines in this film. One of them is the woman who we're talking about who is finding her way for sexual liberation. Her husband is having an affair, and her brother gets killed, and so there is a through line. There is a storyline that's happening that that kind of introduces her to this tenta monster. So it's not just like it's just boom about this tenta monster. So it's weirdly kind of this drama narrative that kind of meets this weird sci-fi premise and then kind of makes a story out of it. I say watch it because I need to know. Yeah,
I mean, I'm intrigued. It sounds like it might make a good double bill with Even the Wind is Afraid, because it's about,
Which one do you watch first, though?
Yeah, I would say probably Even the Wind is Afraid. Probably.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was yeah. I don't know why I asked. Of course. I watched the Untamed like before I watched my other two selections, and I'm like, oh, I need time. No, I can't.
Right. That's why you pushed back our recording time today. You needed some recovery time.
Yes. So again, The Untamed by Amat Escalante. Great performances. I really like the performances in the film. And again, really, the guy knows what he's doing. I mean, the pacing of it is so slow that it should not have worked, but it does work. For as vague as it is at the beginning, where you're not sure where the story is going, he really does make it work, and it does kind of capture attention. And if you stick with it, you will get tentacle sensuality at some point.
You'll get something out of it. Do you know where it is available? Where did you check it out?
You can actually rent it on Prime Video.
Okay, cool.
If I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure that again, I don't know. My friend sent me a link, so I asked a friend, I'm like, do you have this movie? He's like, oh yeah, let me send you a link to it. So I didn't ask him if that was an unrated version or not, but
right.
How do you make this movie any rated?
Yeah. I think if you're going to make a movie with this concept, you're probably just going to go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, The Untamed. I am fascinated. I will say that. You have my attention, sir. Okay, so my second one is a film by Mr. Robert Rodriguez, and it is called Planet Terror. For those of you who don't know, it is one half of a double feature that came out in the theater that was released. Grindhouse, he directed Planet Terror. Quentin Tarantino directed Death Proof. They both stand on their own tremendously together. They're also great. But I love Planet Terror because I'm a huge fan of grindhouse cinema. This is a beautiful homage to grindhouse cinema. It's got great jump scares. It's got some really disgusting gore stuff going on. It's as funny as it is scary. The special effects makeup is terrific. It's got a banger of a cast. And actually, my favorite thing about the movie is the score, which Robert Rodriguez also did. I think the score is incredible. And sometimes I watch, sometimes if I'm craving a good Halloween movie, I watch it again, but I mostly watch it for the score because it's so damn good. And I love Freddie Rodriguez in this. I just finished 6 Feet Under, which I had never seen. And I just finished that. So like watching him in that, and he's so great in that, and rewatching this and seeing him in this, it's just, I love that guy. I'm bummed he doesn't get more work. It's probably because he's so dang short. But Tom Cruise is so dang short, and he gets a lot of work.
I don't know. Is Freddie one of those Scientologists?
No, that's probably why he doesn't get that work, is because I don't think he's a Scientologist.
There you go.
Well, Freddie, if you're listening to this, if you become a Scientologist, I'm not going to say I endorse that. I'll stop.
Yeah, we understand why you need it.
I'll understand, but Planet Terror, have you seen it, Felix?
I'm sorry. Yes, I did Planet Terror, man. I had to confess something to you. I dug that more than Death Proof when I saw it. I went to the double feature. Then again, I went to the double feature when it originally came out at midnight.
Yeah,
and I think Death Proof came on like at 2:33.
Right.
I don't care, bro. I don't care right now. I'm just gonna take a nap for a bit and then wake up and see what happens. But I did find Planet Terror just insanely fun. Everything about it, just the gore, just how ridiculous it is. You know, it's like Dead Alive. You know, films that know how ridiculous they are and embrace it.
Just embrace it. Yeah.
Absolutely, you're in for the ride because you're like, okay, they know what they're doing to the T, and I'm like gonna enjoy it just like they enjoy making it. Yeah, very fun movie, and Freddie is awesome in it. I totally forgot that he's our main protagonist there, and yeah, he doesn't get enough work. You're right. Now that I think about it, man, he does not get enough work.
He's so good. I
saw him in something. Where did I see him? I saw him in something else recently. I thought, is he on a TV show or something?
When I finished 6 Feet Under, I IMDb'd him because I was like, man, why don't I see him in more stuff? And he does do a lot of TV work and bit parts here and there, and he's been a series regular on a few other things. But as far as I'm concerned, he doesn't get enough. He doesn't get enough. Enough love and enough work. But if you haven't seen it, Planet Terror, it's just a good time. I didn't even go through the plot because it's pointless. It's just fun. It's an absolutely ludicrous plot that is just ridiculous. But
I can't even tell you what the plot is. And you know what? And it's definitely worth a revisit.
Yeah.
Because, just hearing you talk about it right now made me think man, I haven't seen it in such a long time. I'm staring at the box right now. I'm like, I need to put you on and enjoy you. Because I know it's going to be fun.
It's fun. Yeah. It's just a rip-roaring good time. And if you're not a fan of grindhouse cinema or don't know what grindhouse cinema is, this movie is like a good introduction to it, because if you watch this movie and you have a good time, this movie came out in 2007 and I didn't know what grindhouse cinema was, and it introduced me to it. And afterwards, kind of seeing a bunch of grindhouse horror after this, or grindhouse action stuff, he does the trailer from Machete at the beginning of this movie. Mm-hmm. Once you dive into that world and appreciate those movies for what they are, it'll open you up to a whole new world of fun cinema that is just, you'll have a lifetime full of entertainment that you did not know you wanted, you did not know you needed until you dive into that world.
I think it's interesting that you say that, because the grindhouse film, just in general, grindhouse is, I don't know, man. I wouldn't say I'm a huge grindhouse guy,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just hit or miss, or it's in the hands of, and in this case, it's in the hands of Robert Rodriguez, who knows exactly what he's doing and exactly, and he's probably a student of grindhouse, so he definitely knows what works and what doesn't, and how to approach something. So I think that's the benefit of watching this film as opposed to just other grindhouse stuff, where it just feels like either they're taking themselves too seriously or they're not. It's just a hit or miss, and
sometimes it's hit or miss, and that's the beautiful thing about a grindhouse movie too. Is sometimes you can put it on and it's like 10 minutes in, you're like, nah.
That's true.
You can move on, but sometimes there's a lot of great actors that came from the grindhouse world. Like Michael Parks, actually, who's in this movie and who's in a bunch of, Tarantino or Rodriguez movies. He was in so many grindhouse movies, and he's such a great actor. So those, the grindhouse movies that he's in, or say actors like Robert Forster or Pam Grier, they're so good, but the movies are so ridiculous. So it's like you have the fun of the ridiculous plots and the crazy scenes and the crazy plot twists and the fun bad acting, but then you have these actors that kind of bring some clout to it and make you love their characters. And then you have movies like Disco Godfather.
But see, so here's my question to you, Nick.
Yeah.
So you differentiate between grindhouse and exploitation?
Yeah, I guess that is an interesting question. I'm not sure if
because I'm hearing you talk right now, and I'm thinking about all the great exploitation films that those filmmakers, those artists came from.
Yeah, right.
When I think of grindhouse, I think more just like, these are people we're not going to... I think in the 80s, I don't know if you're familiar with 80s horror stuff. I think it's 80s. But did you ever watch a movie called Nukem High?
Yes. Yes.
Do you remember that? That would be Grindhouse, right?
That would be Grindhouse, yeah.
Okay, good. So then we're talking about, what is that? Who's that guy that makes those movies? The little guy?
There's a book. I have his book like on my shelf, but
it's not Mel Brooks, but he looks like him.
Yeah, right. Kaufman something?
Yeah, Kaufman.
Yeah.
What is that? Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting place to start, because those 80s, especially his movies, they like you're totally right. They would be Grindhouse because they have all the elements of
those movies were kind of like post heyday of Grindhouse, and I'm not an expert, so somebody's going to send me a bunch of comments like, no, actually, it's not. That's not. So I'm sorry if I'm misspeaking, but those, like he did like the Toxic Avenger and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of like post heyday of Grindhouse when, like I don't know if Toxic Avenger like were actually in cinemas for long. Like that guy started making movies when like home video was coming out. So like he's kind of the predecessor to like the Sharknadoes of the world. Whereas the Grindhouse and the exploitation movies, blaxploitation, exploitation, Grindhouse movies, those were all kind of predecessors to people like Robert Rodriguez.
And you're right, because I think under Grindhouse you could definitely put certain films, right? Like the karate films, even though I think of them as exploitation, I think they probably fall under Grindhouse.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Kung fu movies, absolutely.
That's crazy. Yeah, I never thought about it that way.
Mm-hmm. Grindhouse, check it out. Check out Planet Terror. It's a perfect Halloween movie because it's got scares, it's got laughs, pop some popcorn, and you're going to have a great time. So my third and final film is The Devil's Backbone. We kind of danced around Guillermo Del Toro earlier in the show, and if we're talking about Hispanic horror filmmakers, we can't not talk about Guillermo Del Toro. The Devil's Backbone, I picked this film just because of what it's about. For those who have not seen it, it came out in 2001. It's extremely gothic film. It's a horror film, it's portrayed as a horror film, but if you peel back the layers, it's just this really brilliant commentary on the Spanish Civil War and on the fight against fascism, which I thought would be an apt film to watch right now, a month before you know what. The film is about a young boy named Carlos. He's taken to an orphanage after his father dies in the war. The other kids who are in the orphanage, they kind of rib him. But once they accept him, he starts to experience some really crazy supernatural stuff. The orphanage is haunted. And I'm not going to say by who and why, but, it's revealed, and it's a beautiful allegory. Like many of Del Toro's films, it's just doused with symbolism. It revels in the fanatic, and it is really, really empowering. One of his more empowering films. I thought maybe it was just because I watched it, now with, with this backdrop that we have, but it's a great anti-war film. It's a great anti-fascism film, and it's got some fun scares in it as well. The Devil's Backbone. Have you seen this film, Felix?
Oh, I love this film. Yeah. After I saw this film, I didn't think I could like another one more. And then Pants came out. I'm like, holy shit, this guy can't do no wrong.
Yeah.
So he's an amazing filmmaker. It's great, how he's able to kind of wrap these horror elements into these like really, really powerful settings, where these films take place, and just the narrative of it all. It's just, again, and I think of a film like this, and I don't know why, but trauma again keeps popping out, even though it's the ghosts that are, traumatized. There's this trauma that is left by a bigger thing than us. To a certain degree, it reminds me again of Tigers Are Not Afraid.
Yeah, it'd be a great pairing with that film, actually.
Absolutely. I thought it would be Cronos, but you're right. This one is a better one because different style, but at the same time, it's like kind of getting at the core of what is going on in the world and how the world is affecting the people in and at that time, at that moment, especially kids.
Yeah, especially kids. We're, both stories we're seeing these kind of supernatural horrific elements through these kids' eyes, but those are kind of almost red herrings for the real horror, which is like the horrors of reality, the horrors of the world, which I love about both of those movies. And which is kind of, like that's a theme throughout kind of Del Toro's films is the monsters aren't what you should actually be afraid of. It's the people, The Devil's Backbone. I think it's only available to rent, on all the streaming platforms. I don't think it is available through any subscriptions, but really, really check it out, especially if you haven't seen it and if you're a Del Toro completist, it's worth a watch, because you can just see this was after Kronos, right?
Yes, this was the second film.
So I mean, he's already got his craft like nailed on this movie. It's very impressive.
Yeah, and it's really cool to know that he made this like with a very limited budget.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like what he was able to pull off of the little bit that he had was just an amazing thing. And I hope if you're a Guillermo Del Toro completist, you've watched this already.
Yeah.
Shame on you if you haven't.
Yeah, for sure.
It is really a powerful film. If you say you've seen what is that? What's the other one that you mentioned earlier? The Peak one, but not this one.
Crimson Peak. Oh yeah.
I would throw something at you. But it is a great film, and yeah, if you get a chance to watch it on Criterion, it's really awesome to hear him talk about the film and about his approach to it. Really,
I haven't checked that. I haven't checked out that commentary, so maybe I will. You know what? Actually, I lied, because I rented this to rewatch it the other day,
okay.
And then the next day it came out on the Criterion channel. So if you have the Criterion channel, it's on the Criterion channel right now. I don't know if they have the commentary on there, but they at least have the movie.
Very cool. Worth a watch. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great film.
So, Mr. Felix, your third and final film.
My third and final film. Well, let me chime in first and say
yes,
that I thought my first and final film. I thought my first film was going to be this, but then it went to number 2, then it went to number 3, then it went to number 4. So I'm only going to mention it because I'm really bitter about the fact that I watched it. It's the remake of Evil Dead. I thought I really liked this film. I saw it many years ago. I think it came out in 2013. And I rewatched it recently. I rewatched it today. And then I'm like, what happened? I thought I liked you. So the filmmakers, and he's from Uruguay. Mm-hmm. He's Felix Martiz, and he does put a Latino in as a protagonist, as a supporting protagonist. And I don't want to dive into this film because this is not my final film, but I will say that it's crazy how, I thought I really enjoyed this film because obviously, if you're hearing this, you have a love and adoration for the original Evil Dead.
Right.
And when this one came out, like they went hard. They went the opposite way, and it worked for them. And I thought it worked for them really in a really great way. And the film has its thing, has its things about it where it's like, it's more the body horror. It's more gory and gruesome.
Right.
It works for like a good 30 minutes, but then it just becomes redundant.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just, I literally fell asleep on it. I had to rewind it and play it again. I'm like, I'm not that old. I should be falling asleep in movies, dude.
Yeah.
So there, that's out of my system. My beard wouldn't let me sleep unless I mentioned that movie. So sorry about that. My third and final, sir, is 1978's Dawn of the Dead.
A classic.
George Romero is from Cuban descent. So this fits into the...
Yes.
At least that's what I hear. It depends who you ask and where you research, but Cubans claim them as theirs. So, but Dawn of the Dead again it's a great film. I'm sure you've all seen it. Funny enough, I saw the remake of it. Okay, so really fast. Dawn of the Dead is about a group of people that go to a mall and basically make that their safe place against the world of zombies that's outside trying to get them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the film's about.
Yeah,
at its core. What the many things that it's about, it's just kind of showering you. So at first glance and at first watch, I saw this, I'm going to say when I was a teenager the first time. And of course, the whole idea of consumerism and like how much we like gravitate toward these things that we need and want, and how it's funny that, even the zombies want to go to the mall after they're dead. And it's like now, all of that is there and it's present and it's never going to change. Now, watching it now, though, it's really interesting because even in the film, they say there's this idea, I don't know who, somebody says it, I think Flyboy says it like, oh, they're coming for us. And then the other guy's like, no, they're just coming to the mall because it's what they know.
Right.
So that idea, I always took it for granted, like, oh yeah, it's what they know, it's what they shop. But it now in modern days, in 2020 times, it has taken a whole different meaning for me in the way that it's the ideas that we keep kind of trying to perpetuate, of what it is that we want or what it is that we hold on to. So it's not necessarily the idea of it's what they know, like they're just going to the mall because they used to shop here. No, it's like there's this kind of really, really deep ideal in their head that is kind of where they belong and that is kind of where they feel at home.
It's their identity almost.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
Well, it's scary, but that is the through line throughout the film. Yeah. And I found that if you take the idea of tribes now, because that's what the fucking world we're in right now. Everybody's like in these their own little tribes, and this is a film about that.
Yeah,
get that the zombies are in their tribe. You have this core of this core group of people that are taking safety and that are living in this mall and kind of creating their own little tribe. And this idea that this is ours and we're going to hold on to it no matter what. So much so that when a biker gang kind of breaks in and tries to I don't know, take over the area or just cause chaos, it's not really sure why they're there, because again, the idea is that they're a biker gang. What else are they going to do other than cause havoc and break shit? But there's these little hints of weirdness throughout the film where like the gang breaks in and they like start taking the money. And for that matter, even earlier in the film, they show the Flyboy and the other character kind of stealing the money from the bank, from the safe in the mall. It's like, dude, it's like the end of the world. There's zombies walking around. You don't need that cash. But again, kind of that idea that this is what we know and this is what we want and this is what we're used to, so we're going to take it and hope that we get to use it one day. It's the weirdest notion until you get to 2020, and it's this idea of like, oh, this is us trying to kind of hold on to that idealism that existed back in the 50s and in the 60s, and this kind of ideal that we're going to try to make America great again, and this kind of belief that all of a sudden, it doesn't matter where we're at, how much we've progressed, and how much we've moved on, and how different our country looks. It's like, no, we want to take it back to the core of how it was back then, and we want to hang on to that. And we're going to hang on to that idea, and we're going to shoot people for that idea, and we're going to defend it to the T, even though it's absolutely abstract and ridiculous to do that. They're still doing that, and they show that in the movie when Flyboy like literally sees one of the gang members steal the money or like taking something, and he's like, "That's mine." It's like, what? Are you crazy? That's not yours. It's nobody's. Nobody gives a shit. Everybody's wrong for taking it to begin with, but then he starts shooting people for it.
Yeah, even the other character is like, what are you doing? They're not here for us. They're here for the shit. Like,
let them take this shit. Right. He's like, this is our stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, no, dude, what is? So it's this kind of crazy notion of just hanging on to these ideals and these things that are only going to destroy us, because as it would have it, it destroys Flyboy. They get him for that.
Yeah.
If he would have just shut up, done nothing, and sit there and just be like, yeah, this gang sucks, take the shit, get out, then we live. But no, it's like, no, I'm going to stand for what I believe in.
Right.
And what I believe in, even though it's wrong and even though it doesn't matter, I'm going to pay the consequence for that. So I found that a real interesting watch this time around, man. If you haven't seen this film, it's 78. Mm-hmm. So even though, to me, the special effects and everything that Savini did with the zombies is just awesome and phenomenal. It might be a little standoffish to some because we're so used to kind of that Evil Dead gruesome reality body horror,
Yeah.
But it's just it puts it in a really weird time, like time and place of when the film was made. And for the gruesome parts, I mean, there are some brutal parts. I really liked. I'm going to mention something else really fast that is kind of, I mean, it's there, so I'm going to talk about it. It's like systematic racism. Yeah. That is a huge topic. That has always been a topic. That is getting its moment right now, finally, where people are either talking about it, discussing it, or avoiding it, or pushing it away like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
This film, it's like, boom, it's right there, right at the beginning of the film. You have these cops going in and fucking just shooting the shit out of everybody, which is a leftover of kind of that idea from Night of the Living Dead. If you guys remember that film, how it ends with them shooting our only surviving black character, not because he's a zombie, just because he's a black man inside this White House. And it's like you kind of transfer that over now to the projects of 1978, and you have this squad going in and just destroying like the black community.
Totally.
And it is like, I watched some of it a couple weeks ago. Crazy, I've seen it twice in 1 month. I saw it with my sister who hadn't seen it before. And it was just a lot for her. She was like, oh my God, holy shit. But she was picking up on things like, when, like, she's like, that's right. It's like the COVID, it's like, it's going to attack these communities first, people of color. It's gonna affect us first, and it's going to affect the projects. It's going to affect all these people living in these homes, and people are going to completely be brutal to them. And it's all in this film that was made in 1978. Again, Romero was always on top of his game when it came to ideas and what he's trying to represent. And, sometimes it's a little much, like when he actually shows hillbillies kind of like, you saw the movie recently, right?
Oh yeah. I watched it again.
I totally forgot that shit existed, that scene.
Yeah.
Where the hillbillies are like, and everybody's like, they don't know, they play the music and you're like, what the fuck is this Hicktown shit?
Right.
And I'm sitting there with my sister, because my sister's already like, this fucking movie's racist, man. What the fuck are we watching? And then these Hicks come out. I'm like, oh my God, this is not helping. But again, the idea that is, unfortunately, the fucking horror of America right now. as it was then.
It's horrifying in its accuracy.
Yeah. Yeah, these fucking hillbillies are fucking carrying guns around thinking, and then, they're, how odd was that you're getting like the military and the police like high-fiving the hillbillies with the guns, and kind of these these hicks that are out there helping them shoot the zombies, and they're like kind of saying, hey man, thanks, and drinking coffee with them and partying with them. It's like, whoa.
Oh, that shit just happened last month.
Yes. Oh, fucking hell.
Dude.
Great film. Such an insane amount of commentary in this film that is very vivid today as it was then, as unfortunately it seems like it's always going to fucking be.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, if not more. Like, I mean, this movie was, had its finger on the pulse of the world when it came out, but it seems, because we have taken this step back, it feels like it hits really hard right now, as you mentioned. I hadn't seen it in about 10 years. So I just rewatched it, and I got emotional watching it, because I was not expecting to get so emotional with these movies. When I came up with this theme for this podcast, Felix, I wasn't expecting to get emotional in so many of them. I was like, yeah, it'll be fun. We'll watch some horror movies. But god dang, I mean, this, as you mentioned, this movie just hits as we are in the midst of this pandemic, and this year's crazy, and we're seeing people die by the hundreds of thousands, and a whole bunch of other crazy stuff is going on. Like, our democracy is failing, our government's failing us, and we're still not waking up. We're still zombied out, dude. We're still addicted to like consuming and this capitalism and our phones, for God forbid. Like, it hit me hard watching this this week. It really did hit me hard, and I got emotional by the end of this viewing.
Yeah, because again, it really does hit hard, especially with the current times we're in. And again, there was a guy in the news in the film, the guy with the beard and the glasses.
Yeah,
and he's like a scientist or something, right? He's like a government guy talking about how we're gonna have to let people die off and kill like a percentage of us, and then that way the other ones could survive.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, again, that reminded me of COVID talk. It's like,
for
what?
Sure. The opening scene of this movie might be the scariest of the film, and it has no zombies, but the movie opens in a TV station, like they're doing live news, and you just see it's pandemonium. People don't know how to deal with this. The emergency broadcast system might be taking over. They're putting up supers of like where people can go for refuge, but somebody else wants to take it down because it's not accurate, and people are going to go to their deaths, and the people want to leave it on because it's going to get them ratings. Like, I'm like, good God, like this is the horrifying realities of what we have. And it just like, whoosh, it's too true, bro. If you have to, I mean, I'm sure, like you said, most people who are listening to this podcast have probably seen it, but it is worth a rewatch right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, going back to the note that you had earlier about Del Toro, it's like the zombies aren't the real villain here. Yeah. Yeah. And for that matter, it's really interesting how Romero kind of balances that idea that it's us that are our own enemies. In this movie, he taps on something that's even deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's the ideas we hold.
Yes.
The ideas that some of us can't let go of that are really the enemy, that are really the thing that are going to bring us down. It's crazy, man.
Crazy stuff.
Really, really great watch. And don't mistake it for the remake.
Yeah, do not watch the Zack Snyder film.
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I thought that movie was really fun. When I watched the original time in the theater, and then I think I watched it again. I owned it on HD, not Blu-ray, but HD DVD.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And I watched it on that, and I'm like, this still holds up. And then 2020, I watched it. I watched it actually right after I watched Dawn of the Dead a couple weeks ago. And I'm like, this feels fucking empty.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just like,
it's a really well-structured horror film, slasher. And it's just, that's all it is. It has nothing, no substance. It's not trying to tell you anything. It's not trying to, it's not trying to be prolific. I mean, obviously, it's a fucking remake.
It's a remake, and it's Zack Snyder.
Yeah, there you go. Enough said. And I didn't know that Romero hated that film. So
yeah,
I just found that out recently when I watched Dawn of the Dead yesterday. I'm like, oh. I did a little research. I'm like, oh, he really did not like that movie. Good. And you
can understand why, because it has none of the ideas that we've just talked about, which is what makes Dawn of the Dead a classic, because as you mentioned earlier, like the effects are not like something to be blown away by, or like, the acting is, Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, but its ideas are some of the best. There's a reason why they call this the end-all be-all zombie movie. And there's a reason why every zombie movie that's been made after this movie has taken, borrowed, or stolen from this zombie movie. There's a reason for all of that, and it's because this is the best.
Yeah, and you can't blame those, because this film literally encompassed everything that it could possibly talk about within that structure of the zombie world and what it represents. You know, all these different allegories that are being thrown in there into the mix and just played with and spits it back out. So you have something so detached from this, like The Walking Dead, which is like, no, it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like The Walking Dead stole from this.
Yeah.
It's its own thing, but it's like, no, but you can see a lot of the elements because it was such a prolific film. Like you said, it's the end all of all zombies film. It really, it's the Bible.
For sure. The Bible. It is the Bible. Dawn of the Dead. It is, it's not available for free streaming anywhere right now. I will say that if you happen to be on YouTube and you happen to type in Dawn of the Dead 1978, there may or may not pop up a very good 4K Blu-ray version of it, of the original theatrical release, that might pop up on YouTube. But besides that, it's not available on like Netflix or anything like that. But do check it out, especially now.
And again, I want to touch back. I don't want people to think that we're bashing on the effects, because Tom Savini is a god, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, we're talking about like the way that we are kind of used to seeing zombies nowadays.
Oh, yeah, it's like we've been spoiled now,
Yeah, exactly. But still, like the tearing of the flesh and the eating, especially in the biker scene, that is
still gnarly.
Yeah, that holds up.
For sure. Dawn of the Dead, just incredible. Check it out. Felix, my friend, thank you for hanging out with me and doing this. This was, I hope you had as much fun as I did, because this was great. So much fun, man. So much fun. It's, as filmmakers, we kind of forget how awesome it is to just sit back and enjoy a film that has substance and means something, Absolutely.
Well, there you have it, my friends. Thank you so much for listening to our Hispanic Horrors episode. I got to get Felix back on the new version of this show, man. He is just so awesome. Bella, my esteemed co-host, will be back on the show next week. And as I mentioned, 3 episodes dropping next week of the Gimme 3 podcast. So, I mean, I think that's what it is. 3 episodes for the Gimme 3 podcast in one friggin' week. What more can you ask for? So, if you don't already, now would be an excellent time to subscribe, so that way you can get those episodes immediately once they are dropped. Also helps out the show immensely if you download the episodes. If you don't want to download each episode, hit the button for each single episode. Hit automatic downloads on our podcast, and it really does a lot to help out the Gimme 3 podcast. So if you do that, we will love you forever and like you for always. Until next week, we want to hear from you. We want to know what you think of the films that we discussed today, and what are some great Hispanic horror films that we may have missed. You can let us know by DMing us on Instagram at the Gimme 3 Podcast, GIMME, spell out 3 podcast, Gimme 3 Podcast on Instagram. You can also send us a text message by scrolling down to our episode description and clicking the link that says send us a text message, and that's going to go directly into our mailbox. And hey, we may even read it on the air. And of course, this is a friendly reminder that we do have some bonus episodes available. Again, the link for our Patreon is in our episode description. We want to thank you all for listening to the Gimme 3 podcast, and we will see you at the movies.